Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the December 12th, 2024 City of Jacksonville Water and Sewer Advisory Board meeting. I'd like to start with a call to order. Wally, do we have a quorum?
We do.
Okay. I'd like to move to the adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
Have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Approved. Did everyone get a chance to review the minutes?
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So approved. All right, Wally, I guess I'm turning it over to you now.
Good evening. We appreciate everybody sharing their evening tonight with us. I know that Christmas is getting close, so I'm happy we had such a good turnout. We do have a couple of agenda items to discuss with you tonight, mostly informational. We don't have any action for you to take tonight. The one action item that we will have for you in the near future is the draft CIP, the capital improvement plan. We did send the draft to council, but we know that there's going to be a few changes, so we'll bring that back to you probably shortly after the first of the year. So with that, I'll jump into our first agenda item. We wanted to give you an update on the lead and copper rules. I know that we've been to you a couple of times before with this, but I think this is well-timed because we just had a few notices go out, and they include some pretty scary language. So I think it's important to give you an update, let you know where we are on the mandate, and then share what we've done to date. So just as a quick refresher, the Clean Drinking Water Act in 1986 banned the use of lead in potable water systems. I think it's important to note that it didn't necessarily ban it in plumbing and some of the other stuff, but it did ban it in all potable water systems. And the city council took action during that same time to basically say, we're following what the federal government is doing and no longer allowing it in the use of the city system. In 2022, the lead and copper rules received a revision. And I think many of the stories like Flint, Michigan over the years with some of the challenges of other water systems that kind of led to this. But basically what the revision said was that all water systems nationwide have to identify the service line material used for services, so homes, businesses, schools, those kind of things. And really the reason they're focusing on services is because lead was used quite a bit in the 70s and 80s, but it was all small diameter. They didn't make large lead pipes. So you're really talking primarily service lines. So with that, we did an evaluation of the city, and we have approximately 10,500 structures that were built in Jacksonville that predate the 1986 ban. So our cutoff was 87 to make sure that we were sure, because I think 86 it was kind of mid-year. So we just went to 87 and said anything before that we need to identify. So I know you've seen this graphic before. We'll give Everett, Washington credit on this, but it's a great example because it's exactly what we have in our system. You can see the main under the city street, and then the service line connects the main to the plumbing inside the house or underneath the house. This service line is what has to be inspected. So basically, we have to, and when we say service line, as you can see, there's a water meter there. Well, typically the water meter delineates the city side, which is the road side of the water meter, and the homeowner's side, which is the home or business side of the water meter. Well, basically the rule mandates that the municipality or water provider is responsible for inspecting both sides.
Wow.
So not only did we have to inspect our side, they recognized that if they left it up to the individual homeowners, that likely it would not get done. So they made it so that the water system had to inspect both sides. So we've done that. So this is kind of what that looks like. You can see we recognize that we are working in the right of way and in front people's front yards. So we try to be cognizant of that. So on the left side, you'll see we lay out 2 plastic bags. We try to take a patch of the sod, set it to the side, dig down to the water service, and as you can tell, we're doing this with shovels. Dig down to the water service so that we can see it, inspect both sides, and then we fill it back in and we try to leave it as best we can so most people don't know that we've been there. So we try to be very careful, and then you can see this is one where we actually dug down, and obviously that's a PVC pipe, so they just call it non-lead plastic. That's the classification. So just an example of what we've found. So we've done this over 4,100 times already. Wow. So if you think about that, we dug over 8,000 holes in doing this inspection. The challenge is we got 6,400 more to go, so times that times 2. The good news is we haven't found any lead service lines to date. We've tried to spread out our inspections. We've tried to be methodical about it. Anywhere we go to a service repair, we go ahead and inspect that entire service while we're there. If we're in an area working on a water main break and we have a little bit of downtime, we try to do the services in that area. And then if we're working in a certain area, we try to focus on that area until we need to move. And then what we try not to do is only one area, because as you can imagine, we could spend 2 years in Northwoods alone, right, and then another 2 years in Bryn Mawr. Yeah. So what we did is we kind of concentrated and focused in parts of Northwoods and parts of Bryn Mawr. And then we also spread out through some of downtown, because obviously we've got our homes here, and then in smaller neighborhoods like Belfort Homes. So we've tried to touch a little bit of everywhere. Our philosophy was if we found lead, we would focus there and try to identify everything in that area. But as long as we didn't find lead, we kind of keep moving on. The challenge with the 6,400 lines that we haven't identified is that we had to tell the homeowners that we haven't identified them yet. We will have to do it, we just haven't done it yet. So we had to send out a notice, and the state had mandatory language that had to be included. And this is what we sent. I know you can't read it on the screen, but we gave you a copy in your agenda folder. We thought that it would be beneficial for you to be able to see what went out, especially if you live in an area that Mr. Thomas already raised his hand, live in an area that we've been inspecting, or that is in an area that hasn't been inspected yet and received this letter. So I think that, there's some important takeaways. We haven't found lead yet. That's good news. But we haven't inspected everything yet. But we were required to provide the second and third page of the letter, which basically says the harmful effects of lead, and it's most harmful in kids. I think most people understand that. And then what you can do if you're concerned about lead, and in one case it actually talks about, or in one place it actually talks about getting your family tested. And I can tell you we've had people that have done that. So they've gone and got tested. So we tried to put a cover letter on top of the state's requirement. And the purpose of that was not necessarily to say that this isn't an important issue, but was to try to better educate and not do so in as scary of a manner as some of the required regulatory language. So, we wanted people to understand that if they see us there, because if they receive this letter, they're one of the homes that we're going to inspect or one of the businesses we're going to inspect. So if they see a city employee digging in their front yard, they understand why. And then we have some, I can tell you, and Derek would attest to this, we received a large number of calls. They see lead and automatically the response goes up. It really doesn't matter what we wrote or what the language said.
That's all they said.
Yeah, they saw lead.
Yeah.
So they saw lead and a phone number and they called. So we've done we kind of go over the letter with them and help walk them through it and help them understand, and I think, and we'll have some takeaways here at the end, but we kind of explain, what they can do if they're concerned, and we even offer to test their water if they're concerned. So we've tried to manage that very well, but you have a copy of what went out. So, and the big thing is, some systems decided that they would take the required state language and just incorporate it into their letter. The letter, the requirement is it has 4 or 5 criteria that have to be included. However, what I've learned is that some of the systems that did that, they toned the language down so much that their letter was rejected. So not only are they going to still have to do the inspections, they have to send all new letters with, that are differently worded and explain why they're now sending 2 letters. So to make sure that we didn't run into that problem, we just attached the state letter, the state requirement, so we knew we met the requirements, and then put our letter on top of it. And we figured, we're customer service oriented. We'll give each person as much time as they need to talk them through it. So the second part of this is, while we were doing some inspections, we found some galvanized pipe. So that is important, and I'll explain why. This is a proactive requirement in the revised rules. And basically the reason is studies have shown that galvanized pipe over a period of time can actually absorb lead from lead upstream of it. And then over time, over a long contact time, allow that lead to leach back out of the galvanized pipe into the water. So the rule requirement says if you find galvanized pipe and you can prove or show that there's never been lead upstream of it, then you just classify it as galvanized pipe and you moved on. There's no notification requirement or anything like that. You've just documented it. However, if you can't prove that there's never been lead in front of it, then you have to classify it as galvanized requiring replacement, or GRR is how the state refers to it. So galvanized requiring replacement. So I already showed you the potholes that we dig. Well, if you think about the city's portion, I'm going to jump back to that slide. If you think about the city's portion of the service line, or the majority of the city's portion of the service line, it's under the sidewalk, the curb and gutter, and the street. So when we inspected, we did not inspect 100% of that service line, and we did not dig all the way up to the front house, or the front wall of the house. So there's no way that we can say that there's never been lead upstream of this service line, because we haven't inspected the full service line. On top of that, during the 70s and 80s, there was, they call them goosenecks, but it literally looks like a gooseneck that comes, it attaches from the main to the service line. And it was made of lead, and we do know that we have at least a few of those in our system, and we don't know completely where they are. So under the current rules, a lead gooseneck is not considered lead pipe. But under the revised rules that will be enforced in the next year or two, they've already been drafted and approved, they just don't take effect. The gooseneck is also considered, and at some point we'll have to locate those. So being that we didn't go all the way to the main, we had no choice but to classify our galvanized pipes that we found as galvanized requiring replacement. which triggers the second letter that I had put into your agenda folder. But here's, again, it goes back to an abundance of caution, right? There's the potential that a pipe over time absorbed lead and then over time allows lead to leach back into the water. The likelihood is small, but it is there. So what we've done is we found to date 83 galvanized service lines.
Out of how many, out of 4,000?
Out of 4,000 that we've inspected. Each of those that we found, we sent the letter that you have attached, and I'll throw it up on the screen in just a minute. Again, we haven't found any lead at all. It doesn't mean that there can't be a lead gooseneck out there or some lead solder joints out there somewhere, but we haven't found any yet. We did trigger the requirement because we haven't inspected 100% of the service line. And right now, the way the rule is written, and this piece has not been ironed out yet, but the way the rule is written, it states that you either have to prove that there's been no lead or you have to replace the service line in 10 years. But it doesn't specify what the 10 years is. It doesn't say 10 years from the date you located it, 10 years from the date you reported it, or 10 years from a date that they specify. It just says within 10 years. So there's more interpretation that will be coming out on that piece. That said, it's still alarming to our citizens. And
Yeah, I got a question. So the 83 that you've located, are they from the main to the meter, from the meter to the house, some of both?
Some of them have been on both sides, but if you find it anywhere, it classifies. When you submit the report, the way it goes in is a spreadsheet. You identify the city side, you identify the homeowner or business side, the structure side of the meter is what they call it. And from there, you report it that way. But the way the spreadsheet calculates is if you put galvanized in, you have to answer a question. So it says, do you know there's never been lead upstream? And if you put no or I don't know, which are two answers, the other is yes. But if you put yes, there has been, or I don't know, then it automatically says this is galvanized needing replacement. And then at the very end of the spreadsheet, it summarizes both the homeowner and the city side and says this service line needs to be replaced. And it's basically referring to the whole service line.
And so whenever this falls back into a 10-year plan or whatever of replacement, is the city responsible for replacing the homeowner's service from the meter to their house, or reporting it to them and that's on them, or is that not identified yet?
That question hasn't been answered yet. That is part of the system. The systems have that question.
Yeah.
Because as you can imagine, there's concerns there, right? If you put it on the homeowner, if you think about some of the homes that may have this, maybe older, smaller homes.
Yeah.
It may not necessarily always be the case, but it can be the case in certain situations. And, I would struggle to replace my entire service line.
Yeah. I mean,
So-
a lot of homeowners aren't going to be able to afford a
That's
$2,000,
right.
$3,000, $5,000 bill or whatever it may be. So
That's right. So we're thinking that the only thing, if the true goal of the lead and copper rules are to remove the lead, copper, and galvanized, and galvanized and copper for the same reason, they can absorb lead. So that's the concern with the galvanized and copper, but the lead and copper rules the whole goal is to remove lead from water systems. Well, if you think about that overarching goal, it only makes sense to put the requirement on the systems, because that's the only way it'll ever actually get done. So we expect at some point they'll come out and say that the system needs to coordinate it and figure it out, but that hasn't come out yet. that said, and you're kind of stealing some of my thunder here, but that said, we've been looking at what options are because we know that this places a health concern on one side and then a financial concern on the other side. So I'll get into that in just a second. We do have information that we want to share with the residents, and this came out of both letters, so just quick summaries. You know, the concern of lead in drinking water all goes back to contact time. It has to have time to leach from the pipe and into the water. So the simple solution is just to run your water before you cook or drink or clean with it, right? So if you just do a flush, if your normal habit is to get up in the morning and take a shower, is kind of one of the first things you do. You turn most of that water over already, so you're largely there. Another is you can put filters in place. We have seen whole house filters that have gone in for one reason or another. You know, some people don't like the taste of chlorine, which is required by the state to feed. Some people have other contaminant concerns, so they install whole house filters. Some people use the Brita that simply goes on the faucet, or the one you stick in your refrigerator. You know, whatever that is, those do help because they help filter out lead. The one thing I'll say is they also create concern. So if you use a filter, make sure you maintain it properly, including the one that goes in the fridge for your ice maker, because they'll actually take the chlorine out of water, and then if you don't clean them, it allows bacteria to grow, and there's nothing there to kill that bacteria. So it's important that if you use a filter, you maintain it properly. And I can tell you there are several places where we've been to water quality complaints, and we go and they have a problem and we start investigating, and there's been at least 2 cases that I'm aware of recently where we found a whole house filter system that the person's lived there 2 years and didn't even know it was there.
Yeah.
So, you know, a previous homeowner put it in, new homeowner buys the house, moves in, and doesn't even realize they have it.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's gross. So if you use filters, just make sure you clean them properly. Cold water with anything, it's, you know, if your lead is more malleable if it's warm. So if you're flush your cold water. Of course, if you've had a hot water heater, you want to flush your warm water too. But if you're really concerned about it, flush your cold water and then cook with your cold water. And then you can have your water tested. The city will do it for free. You can actually call and request, and we'll come out, take a sample. It's not even something we do in-house. We'll send it off, and you get the reports from a third-party lab. And then, you know, lastly, if somebody is really concerned and they want to know what they can do, they can go inspect their own service line material. If you do, we'd appreciate it if you report it back to us so that we know and we can document it. But homeowners can take steps to hire somebody to come do their own inspection. And the only thing I'll add, I threw this in, you won't find it written anywhere, but if a homeowner decides to hire somebody to do their service line, have them check your plumbing while they're there. Because everything that we're doing does not go past the front wall of the structure. So we're not checking anybody's plumbing or anything like that. And I know that there's a lot of houses out there with copper pipe.
Yeah.
Now, if we don't find any lead upstream of that copper pipe, it's less of a concern. But the city no longer allows copper pipe for use as service lines either because of the lead and copper rules. It can be used in the plumbing, but we don't allow it for use in our system or attaching to our system.
So can you sleeve a small line like that?
Not really. The best thing to do is pull it out. Because you're taking a 3/4 inch line and trying to slip something inside of it, or a 1/2 inch if you're talking about plumbing, it's a 1/2 inch.
So the 80-some lines that you found that were
Galvanized.
galvanized, were they centrally located or
We
any rhyme or
found,
reason?
we found quite a few in the Northwoods area that were all built around the same time. My guess would be probably by the same builders or, same group, because they seem to be clustered. And what I will say is that's an area we're going to go back to.
Yeah.
Because we haven't looked at everything right in that area. When we were, the galvanized, we documented the galvanized line, but what we didn't realize until we documented the galvanized line, but we hadn't found any lead. So we weren't as concerned with the galvanized line until we talked to the state and they said, well, if you haven't located all of your service, then you have to deem it requiring replacement, which at that point it became a higher concern. One of the other things, I'll jump to my next slide. So our priorities moving forward are, we're going to continue to maintain a safe, reliable drinking water system. We have to test for lead and copper anyway. It's a state mandate, and we do it. We're on a 3-year cycle. So you start. It's basically. You start on one cycle, and as you prove that you have no issues, you get to extend out, and the max is 3 years. So we're on a 3-year cycle. So we test for lead every 3 years anyway, and we have specified places that we go test, those addresses, and many of those are established residents, so we've worked with them before, so they know exactly what we're looking for and how we want them to test or pull the sample for us. We're going to continue our inspections. We have to get all 6,400 done. Our goal is to have those. There's no specific timelines in which we have to have them done yet, but we expect that will come. But our goal is to have those done over the next two to 3 years, definitely by 27. And then as we deal with our residents, we will educate them. One of the practices that we're going to put in place now is moving forward. We've done additional inspections since we submitted this. And we have found a few more galvanized lines. I don't know how many. So we will have to send notices to those individuals also. I think those notices have to go out before the end of the year. So we'll send those notices also on those that we found. But moving forward, what we're going to do, if we find a galvanized line, we're going to try to go ahead and talk to that citizen while we're there. If we find it in their home, we're going to talk to them. If not, we may leave them a door knocker and ask them to call us and then bring them their letter. Because again, there's the concern there when they see it requiring replacement. And then, we recognize the health concerns. We'll do anything that we can to walk the homeowners and business owners through that, to educate them. We focus on the high priority areas, schools and daycares and those kind of things. But, we do try to, like I said, we'll test for free. We'll do whatever we need to do. And then, the big thing is we recognize that there's a financial concern. So we are actively pursuing funds to replace both our side and the homeowner's side. Even if I get the funds, it will come with a challenge because I don't, the city doesn't have the right to just go replace their service line up to the front wall of the house. And then to do that, we'll have to have easements and permission from the property owner. We'll have to bid it out, so we'll have to put a project together. So our thought is if we can find enough funds, then it may be possible to issue all the ones we found in a single project, bid it out, and have grant funds to pay for it. So we're looking for funding options. And we have, We have found a few alternatives that we can use. The problem is the ones we found so far are located, they're tied to specific blocks or zones. So it has to be a registered zone in order for us to use that funding in that, in that area.
Yeah.
So if we only have 5, we're only finding funding for 5 at a time. So we're going to work through all of this, but it's just going to take us some time. So, and then the other, comment I'll have for you being that you look at the CIP every year, the capital improvement plan every year, you're probably going to see some service line replacement projects come into play. We'll probably start trying to program those so that we're planning for them, and whether we're funding them, through our rate model or we're funding them through a grant, at least we're planning for them. So again, our goal is to reduce that burden on at least the residential customers. I'm not going to say we're not concerned about the business customers, but generally a business has more opportunity for funding than a private individual. So that kind of brings us up to speed on where we are today. One of the other things that we have in practice, if we go out and we have a water leak or damage to a service line, we're going ahead and identifying both sides, and we'll continue to do that. We have done a few service line replacements, not related to this project, just where we've had failures. And one of those was Coal Drive. I don't know if you remember that project, but we were repaving the street and we were having a lot of failures in the water services under the asphalt. So we went ahead of the paving project and replaced all of those services. So the good thing is those aren't services that we'll have to come back and inspect because we know what that material is. And we won't have to replace at least that portion because we replaced it already. And then we do have a project right now for the Branchwood subdivision that is on hold, but we have a lot of water service leaks in Branchwood, although not related to this because most of that is a thin wall tubing, and that tubing is just brittle. So we end up replacing a lot of service lines in Branchwood. And we've actually had to go into a procedure in Branchwood when we replaced the service line, we replaced the whole thing up to the meter. Because what we're finding is we may put what's called a 3-part union. It looks like a wrap that goes around the pipe, and it just, it covers the hole and seals it up. And what we're finding is we may do it today and it starts leaking tomorrow right beside it because it's just so brittle.
Right.
Once we expose it, it just we finally gave up when we got to one and we were on it the 3rd or 4th time, and it's like this just doesn't make sense. Let's get our 3-part unions back and let's run new tubing. So we put a project into place to replace the water services in Branchwood, and as we were doing investigation, we found that the sewer main needs it doesn't need replacements, it needs some point repairs. So we've asked for additional funding in this CIP, which was in the draft, to go through and add that to the water project. So hopefully we'll get that all approved and be able to move forward in Branchwood. So we are out replacing some services, but they've been more of a operation maintenance replacement than we're going to replace a water line that hasn't had any failures because of a material type.
So it probably wouldn't alleviate, I'm sure you would have to go look anyway, but one of my partners built every single house in Bryn Mawr pre-1987.
That would help because we can use historic records.
Yeah.
So if he has what he used, that would be beneficial.
Or at least the knowledge is detailed. I'm sure he had 2 or 3 project managers working for him, but he was responsible for every house over there. And as detailed as I know he is, he probably
That would
knows.
be extremely beneficial.
I'll talk to him.
Because if he can say, and this is kind of how we put our philosophy together on how we're inspecting. Jacksonville built out, a subdivision was kind of planned, but when they plat it, they plat limited number of lots at a time. And so for example, I'm just going to pick a recent one or a more recent one, Carolina Forest, Stagecoach Drive. Well, Stagecoach is long, and it's got, Stagecoach 1, Stagecoach 2, Stagecoach 3A, 3B.
Right.
And what we've found is historically builders were in one section and tended to use the same materials. And so while we're inspecting everything that we've done now, we visually looked at them, it does prove our theory. So if we get to a point where we have to do a model that shows what we think we have so that we can focus more, it at least supports our philosophy. So if you can provide us that information, that helps further support our philosophy on how to look and where to look and how to focus. And, to TJ's credit, I'm presenting tonight, but TJ's been the one behind the scenes running everything. To his and his crew's credit, I remind everybody that they fixed all the water and sewer problems in the city, and he does it with 11 people on top of the inspections.
Right.
So he's got his hands full right now.
So you say there was 83 identified,
Yes, sir.
and they got this letter?
They did.
Well, I feel kind of special, because I got 2.
You got one of each?
No, I got for 2 different locations.
Oh, yeah.
Addresses.
But are they in a very similar, are they fairly close?
Same street.
Yeah,
I mean,
and see,
I knew I had galvanized. I mean,
Yep.
I had a leak one time that went under the house and it spurted up and had to replace. And so I don't think they dug my yard up. Do you think they
if you got the letter, we went and looked.
looked?
We
You did a good
dug.
job. You didn't, I mean, but anyway, I'm fine.
Well, that's good. I love to hear that because we try. I mean, we go in and we.
Randy's going to go home and look tonight. He's going to
Well, and remember, some of these inspections could have occurred a summer or 2 ago, because we've been inspected for 2 years now.
Okay.
The trigger to send the letter is we had to submit the database that we had collected
Gotcha.
in October. That's what triggered the letter now. But now that we know, we have to send the letter within 30 days of locating the service, the galvanized.
Well, I'll say I'm not concerned with a galvanized pipe. Now, can you tell me what the penalty is for the 10-year expiration? Because I might want to live with that instead of the possibility of
Well, and I think that's how a lot of homeowners are going to feel, right? I've never had any problems. I tested my water, or the city tested my water, and it was absolutely fine. Why do I need to replace pipe that I don't have problems with?
Right.
And I think that's why, I think a lot of that is why if the true goal is to remove all of this from systems, it's gotta be a federal mandate that's passed down to the water providers. That's the only way it'll get done.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to say, like I said, I knew it was there. My mom's house had a leak, and you knew it was there. We hadn't any problems. My kids turned out all right, so that was a good thing.
Now I have 3 alarms.
Yeah, and they all.
Again, the lead, like if you go back to, because, when Flint, Michigan happened, I was really concerned because we were, we had our water treatment plant, and, so we went and we did a case study and we looked at the challenges that they had. And there were 2 big ones. One, they had large pipes, and because of manufacturing changes, they were getting water from, I think it was Detroit maybe, but they were buying large volumes of water. Well, the water became so expensive, they decided that they needed to build their own. So they built their own treatment plant to have their own water. Well, you have water that you have a system sized for large volumes of water because of manufacturing and other processes that you don't have anymore, so you don't have the water usage that you had, so you have more contact time, and then there was actually a decision made not to feed a chemical to help with the corrosion in the pipes, which we feed. So the great thing for our system is we feed that because not only does it help, it helps with all corrosion. So it helps coat valves. It helps. It's safe to drink. I don't want to scare anybody, but the whole purpose is for feeding it into a water system and protecting the system. Well, if they'd have been feeding that, they probably would have had much less problems. So they just had a whole slew of unfortunate events that led to that problem. And on top of that, the water that they went to was very aggressive. And we had our water tested, and we do not have aggressive water. Partially because we're pulling groundwater. This, if you look at Black Creek, it's drinking water standards when we pull it out of the ground. So all of that adds to the benefit of our system. And then, one other saving grace that we have is, we're nicknamed Boomtown for a reason. Our system, the oldest parts of our system date back to like the 40s. And so if you look at our system, you saw the numbers. There was 10,500 that were built pre-1987, and 10,100 that were built after 87. So you're talking about only half of our system is even in consideration because of the age of our system. And, there's other systems in the state that date back to the 18 and 1900s. So you've got, matter of fact, there's one system that went to repair a pipe, and they pulled a wood pipe out of the ground. They had a banded wood pipe in place. So, those systems are dealing with different challenges than we are. So, and I know that, we sent out a quarter of the letters that one of our larger surrounding partners had to send out. So
these letters only go to the water customer? Because I have some rentals that date in this time frame, but I don't pay the water bill. The tenants do. I'm just worried they take it, throw it in the trash.
They might. It went to the physical address.
The water.
It says water
Gotcha.
or nothing.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't pay the water bill.
It went to the physical address the meter is located at, because that's the user. The idea was, to get it to the user. That and everything that the law states, that's what it's geared toward. So even if the water bill, we didn't even pull it from billing records. So even if the water bill went to your address instead of your tenant's address, it would have went to your tenant, because that's the address where the meter is physically located.
And this is for commercial and residential, right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
And it's curious to me about the copper, because I always favored copper as opposed to PEX or.
It's supposed to be really good. Matter of fact, my builder, when he built my house, suggested I run copper up, because I put I put my washer dryer on the top floor, and because of washers can have surge. He suggested that I run copper up there. I decided not to, because I didn't want to pay the price. And I think he ran stainless steel instead or something. It wasn't the PE tubing, but I think he ran stainless steel. Did they do a braided stainless steel or something?
Yeah.
I think that's what I ran up there, and that was cheaper than the copper.
Yeah.
So, yeah, copper's always been desired because it's such a good material. The concern is that it can leach.
And final thought, I've always heard when somebody says it's out of abundance of caution, it's somebody else's money.
We're going to attach your number to the next letter that goes out.
Yeah.
So landlords with concern could contact the city and say, hey, I have these
Right.
Yes.
particular addresses. I need to find out if I have.
Absolutely. If if you have rental properties and you want to give us the address of the rental property or the address of the meter, we can let you know what our database has in it. Any other questions?
Yeah, I got a silly question, probably. Only because I have two sons that are locators, one for the city.
Yep.
Now I have another one that's doing it too. Can you not use that technology to try to locate whether or not you have metal pipe in there?
So there is a technology that we tried to use, and I think we actually presented it
Yeah, I
to
remember
you
you
way
showed
back, because we found it ahead of everything going into place, and we tried to purchase it. North Carolina, the state of North Carolina, actually ruled we couldn't use it, and we had a PO cut and everything to purchase it. And the way it worked is a probe went up the pipe, and it used a low voltage signal that is sent back down the pipe, and it used the resistance of that signal to determine what the pipe material was, because what they found is that plastic, as you can imagine, has almost no return of a signal, and lead had like a 95% return of a signal. And then I think copper was something slightly below that. And then galvanized, I don't remember exactly, but I think galvanized was in the 60s or 70s. So you knew, and as you were moving down a pipe, if you went, let's say that somebody had a leak on a galvanized line, and the only way to repair it was to cut that section out and put a piece of plastic in it, whether that's PVC or a polytubing or whatever else. As the probe passed through the pipe, it would actually register the change, because it would get a good signal and then go to a dull signal. Now, once you pass that dull signal, that signal was cut because of now that plastic pipe.
Right.
But you had an idea that you had a material change there, so you could go look at it. We thought that was an excellent solution. It required no digging. All you had to do was pull the meter out, and you could feed toward the main, and you could go all the way to the main, and then you could feed toward the house, and you could go all the way up to the first stop in the house. It would make 90-degree bends. It would make 45s. So we thought that was a great solution. The state did not like it, because they felt like if you had a pipe that had any kind of burrs or anything else on that pipe, that when you went through it, you could knock that loose, and you could potentially, let's say you're going through a galvanized pipe that somehow absorb lead over time, or if you're going through a lead pipe that had a burr on it, you could potentially leach lead into the water. Now, when we submitted like a 30-minute flushing plan. So we would do a 30-minute flush at the house to run any water that would be in the service line out. But the state didn't accept it. They rejected it.
Lawyer came up with that.
Now with we have gone back to the state with they now know too that the rule's going to change on goosenecks. And if you think about where I said the gooseneck was used, it was used between the main and the service line, which means that 95% of our main service line connections are under a city street or a DOT street. So if we had that tool, it could be, we'd have to figure out how to get the signal across. So it may mean that we have to put would have to put a rod in the street, but maybe that could be a whole lot less invasive than putting cutting up the whole service line. If you're gonna expose the whole service line to determine what it is, you might as well just replace it.
Yeah.
Because at that point, the cost is the excavation and the repair, not the minor costs of the pipe.
Yeah.
So across the street, about a year ago, they had a leak, and they had to take out the curb. Did they do the whole replacement? Does that indicate that they did that? I mean,
We probably did. Did they cut the asphalt too?
oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, then we replaced the whole thing.
So
It was
they got-
probably, if it was galvanized, that piece was probably so bad we couldn't tie back into it. That would be my guess. I mean, it's a guess.
That's unusual when you go for
Yeah,
repair,
if-
is they take the 8 feet of curb out.
Yes, if
But
we
in fact, did a
were,
great job, so.
well, thank you. But if we replace it from the street to the main in the street to the meter, it's because we couldn't find anything to tie into. That or was broke in the street. And if it's gonna, it's pretty minor to do work in grass. It's much more expensive and difficult to do it under the curb and gutter, sidewalk, or the street. So I think most of the time, if we have to go in at the street, we just go ahead and replace it so we don't have to come back. So big kudos to TJ because his crews have their hands full. Wow. I do have one other thing for you. If you're all right, if we move to open discussion.
Yes, sir.
All right.
We can move right to it, Wally.
I appreciate it. So I just wanted to close the loop on something that we've talked to you numerous times about. This is the Central Coastal Plain Capacity Use Act. Say that 3 times fast, but you'll know it as the Black Creek Aquifer. You'll recall that we had to reduce our permitted withdrawal from the Black Creek. This act was put into place in 2001 or 2, if I remember correctly. And basically what it said is that water providers that took water from the Black Creek would have to reduce their withdrawal in 3 25% step increments. So in 2008, we took our first permitted withdrawal reduction to 25%. So prior to 2008, the city was permitted at 4 million gallons a day. So in August of 28, we went to 3 million gallons a day. In 2013, we went to 2 million gallons a day. And in 2018, we were permitted for 0.37 billion gallons a year, the equivalent of 1 million gallons per day. What the act found, or what the research found, was that all of the water purveyors together were overdrawing the replacement capability of the aquifer. So basically, we were depleting the aquifer. So and you can see the zone on the map there, and there are different zones, but I think the most important thing is that we were in 2 zones that were of concern. One was a dewatering zone, and then the other was the saltwater encroachment zone. So the saltwater encroachment or saltwater intrusion basically means that you've taken so much fresh water out that we're close to the coast that it ends up being replaced by saltwater, which is also a challenge unless you're running a reverse osmosis type plant that can handle salt water. So that said, we've constructed monitoring wells. We've done hydrogeologic modeling, water modeling, to show what the aquifer is doing. And this is a snapshot of a graph I know you've seen before. We actually had Dr. Sproul come and speak to you, for those of you that have been here for a few years. And basically what he shared is you can see the different steps. And this graph is us and Omwassa combined, because we withdraw from the same area. An aquifer is not bound by city limits or county limits or anything like that. It's underground and it's bound by its confinement, and that confinement covers multiple counties that you just saw before. So our withdrawals kind of work hand in hand together. But you can see that the line with the triangles was our usage. So you can see us stepping down or taking less water to meet our demand from the Black Creek, and that's because we built the water treatment plant and went to the Castle Hayne. And then you can see the kind of the squiggly line that starts climbing are the water levels. And you can see that they really start stabilizing and climbing right around that third step. So, and again, that's because of people getting out of the aquifer and then it recovering, replenishing.
itself.
Yes, sir. So with that, we constructed monitoring wells, and we had that modeled. We've been working with NCDEQ, the groundwater section, on our withdrawal limits. We submitted, they required a multitude of information. We submitted all of that information. It actually required a few of our pumps to be moved, so we had to pull the well or pull the piping, pull the pump out, shorten it so it sits above the top of the aquifer, and then put it back in place. So we did all of this work, and we were actually approved in December or November. I think we received our final in December, to go from 1 million gallons of permitted capacity to 2 million gallons a day of permitted capacity. And I know that I'm extremely excited. I don't know. It's huge. Some people may not understand how huge that is, but we built the water treatment plant in 2012. So working off of 2012 dollars, that 1 million gallons is equivalent to about $6 million of capital cost. So this exercise that we've gone through is huge when you look at the additional capacity. I know 1 million, when we have a treatment plant that's rated for up to 8 million gallons, and you have, what's one more, but it's extremely beneficial. And if you'll recall, the water that we pump out of the Black Creek is cheaper to produce because we don't have to send it fully through our treatment plant. So it's much cheaper water. It's great quality. Our residents love it. That's one of the things that, we've always gotten compliments about. And then, the last piece of that is that it just allows us to better manage our aquifer systems. So now we can, if we need to pull more from the Black Creek, we can. If we need to pull more from the Castle Hayne, we can. And that's really important when you consider working with the base, because the base's only water supply is the Castle Hayne. So the more pressure we put on the Castle Hayne, the more pressure we put on the base. And if you remember, I talked about that saltwater encroachment zone. They're closer to the ocean than we are. So they would see that saltwater intrusion before we would. And they would see it before the Black Creek would, because it's at a higher level that's more influenced. So our permit expires on December 31st of 2029. Now, I will say that there's a caveat in there that if the water levels, go the other direction or aren't stabilized, then the state can roll that back. But if we manage it properly, and with what we're currently seeing, that was a huge benefit for the community. So I'm excited that, the state's worked with us a long time on getting this increase. I think we've been working on this increase for the better part of about 3 years now. So it's really nice to get there.
And were the other municipalities able to increase theirs as well?
I don't know. I'm the only one that I know of. The city is the only one that I know of in our area that's been able to do that. I know that maybe Greene County did something, but I think they went a different route. I think they had a hardship case or something. But we followed the state rules and put in the monitoring wells, and we monitor the withdrawal.
Had to prove a lot.
Yes, yes. There were multiple back and forths over the last 3 years to get to this point.
Thank you, Wally. We appreciate
Thank
the
you.
information. Does anyone else have any questions, issues, concerns?
Well, I kind of hate to, since Wally's on such a high note. But I did watch the city council meeting
Yes.
last week. I don't know if you give us a 2 or 3 minute synopsis.
Sure, absolutely. So we had, what Mr. Thomas is referring to is we bid out the main, the station and headworks portion of the work for the Western Regional System. And we put the project out for bid twice. The first bid opening, we had no bidders.
Wow.
The second bid opening, we had a single bidder. You know, it's not real hard for a company to figure out how many bidders there are when they start talking to suppliers. So I'm sure that affected the results. But we ended up with basically the bid came in, and if you're okay with me using round numbers, but the estimate was about 11 million in 2023, and the bid came in right at about 20 million. Wow. So now some of it we expected to come in over, but not that much. You know, both force mains came in about 7.5% over the estimate. From 2023, but I mean, if I hadn't done that math, but it's about 40 or 45%, I'm sure. So it was well over the estimate. One of the things that I went and met with Sabrina, you know, I really struggled with this recommendation because I can say I've presented a lot, and I know you've seen them. I've presented a lot of bid openings, and there are times where I've had to ask for money to complete a project or where it came in over the engineer's estimate. Never by that much. So I really struggled with that recommendation. But basically, I got to the recommendation that talking with the engineer, talking with staff, talking with some suppliers that we have good relationships with, we decided we should recommend moving forward with that. And there were two key reasons. One, we went from 0 bidders to 1 bidder. We only had 2 plan holders at all on the project. We tried to contact other bidders and recruit them to bid.
Yeah.
You know, we do this every time. We have people that we worked with historically, and we call them and we send them the plans and say, you know, please bid. You know, we enjoyed working with you. And, you know, we were told we just have too much work. They didn't even take the plans. We didn't feel like that would change. And then probably one of the biggest concerns I have is at the last meeting, I think it was the last meeting, we gave you an update on Hurricane Helene. I know we didn't meet in November, so I think it was your October meeting. We gave you an update. You know, we sent support to West or Old Fort in the western part of the state. Well, one of the things that you know, we still need to give a lot of prayers for those communities because they're still recovering. A lot still don't have treatment, or they have temporary treatment where the state or the federal government has brought in portable treatment to help them. But most of their water treatment plants, wastewater treatment plants, and pump stations have to be rebuilt. And the reason is, you know, if you think about a water treatment plant, it's located near the river. If you think about a wastewater treatment plant, it's located near the river. If you think about the pump stations, they're located in a low area, so they're located near the river. So when the river flooded, the river, you know, whatever river or creek they were on, when they flooded, they took out all of their stations, all of their treatment plants, and all of their equipment. So the type project this is, it's pumps, motors, controls, electronic equipment. We just didn't think if we wait 6 months, it's going to be any more favorable.
So the urgency of this project, so tell me what this project is again?
So it's the Western Regional System. It intercepts wastewater in the Williamsburg Plantation area. We have a main trunk sewer that runs between Williamsburg Plantation and Woodlands, that Northwoods. So there's a branch through there. That trunk sewer runs through. Well, the development that's happening at the vineyards right now comes through that. Well, everything all the way down to Arlington West Apartments, or actually Windsor Place Apartments.
Yeah.
All of that goes through that trunk sewer. So Brookview, the Brookview pump station, the Henderson pump station, and that trunk sewer are becoming over inundated with wastewater, and our models show that we wouldn't even be able to handle the full build out of that area, and we're pretty much going to be capped out when the vineyards finishes. So there's a little bit of time, but not a lot. And one of the things, one of the other things that's considered for the area is a new hospital too. So Veterans Hospital. So if that that's also a high water demand. So we need to move forward with the project. Waiting 6 months, I just don't feel like we're going to get a better bid.
Yeah, it would probably be a longer time window. So was it a local? Was it somebody doing?
It was TA Loving.
Was it really?
It was. And they've done a lot of our work. They've been a really good partner of ours. But some of a lot of other contractors, they're just so busy.
Yeah, I was just thinking, the contractors that are doing your current projects, don't have the capacity probably to handle 2 or 3
Yes.
projects that size at a time.
That's
But
correct.
one-
And the type project.
Yeah, true.
So unfortunately, the one thing that we weren't one of the things that I would have liked to have done, I just wasn't comfortable recommending, was we bid out to, the way the station's designed, it's designed to be able to be expanded in the future to be the same size as the main pump station. Right now, it's being constructed at half that size. The way it's designed, it basically gets a wet well that's poured, and then it will be mirrored, and all the valving and piping is laid out to be tied right into with a mirror station. So what'll happen is it'll become a 9 million gallon a day station. Right now it's designed and being built at 4.5 million gallons a day. What we would have liked to have done is constructed the wet well, the concrete portion now, so that we don't have to come back later and excavate. But that bid alternate was about $3 million or something, and when you're already that far over, I just wasn't comfortable, spending that money now. So
Yeah, well, you're exactly right. Certainly, when there's going to be one bidder and they know it, I mean, it obviously affects the number, and that's the market that you're in right now. So
unfortunately,
cost of doing business right now, unfortunately.
Couple of good things that do come out of it, because we awarded it when we did. It does make it eligible for I don't remember, it's ARP, but I don't remember the acronym. But it's basically reinvestment funds, and that have to be spent by, or they have to be committed, not spent, committed by December of this year, or by the end of December of this year. So we have a project that has been to the state for approval, that already has those funds. That's where the $23 million we have in grant funds came from. So if there's money that they have available that needs to be used or committed in time, they could do it to our project. And we have advertised to them that we would be more than willing to be ready.
Have a need.
Yes. So now there's no telling if there'll be extensions or something. A lot of times extensions happen. But we wanted to be, that was another benefit. We wanted to be ready. Even though this doesn't require state approval because it's not being, we don't have any grant funds yet, we went ahead and went through the entire process. So that, that probably didn't help either, because we went through that process. So it did delay time a little bit, and but it does make it eligible. So that is, if there is even a silver lining, I guess the silver lining is we're able to move forward we are able to submit for grant funds. And then the last piece that I'll sum it up with is Sabrina and I met. We went through the model, the rate model. We went through the CIP. And basically, I think what we'll end up doing is adjusting a couple of projects within the 10-year timeframe. But basically, it showed from that, because of our current fund balance, that the 2.25% that this board has subscribed to and the council has kind of continued with, it shows that it will cover that increase even with the CIP that we have. But it may require a few minor project. We're talking slipping a project a year or two, and while that doesn't sound like a lot, that can make an effect because you end up leveling out some of your funding.
Yeah, just hopefully every project in the next 5 or 6 years is not, on paper underfunded by half.
That's a concern.
Yeah, and it's, part of it's, we see it every day in what we do. It's going to take, a little bit of a slowdown. There's more going on than resources out there to do it, which is, always demands a premium, so.
There is, and we took bids on a project yesterday. Yesterday. And it was we estimated $2.3.5 million or so, and it came out at, the low bid was at 2.5, I think. And that was, and we went up, it was a project that we did last year. It's our paving project. It's the project we did last year. And we used our numbers and inflated those from last year. And the top end, while the bottom was 2.5, the top end was like 3.9. So the high bidder was almost $4 million.
Well, on this Western Regional Trunk Station, I can remember sitting here in 2010. And
Yes.
Grant Sparks' initial estimate was $20 million.
Yeah, or 23, I think, 23 something.
Now,
Yep.
you're at 47
Yep.
now. So that's something to keep in mind as things go on, you do.
Well,
it takes time, it's a long time.
Yeah, but, there's been, hopefully where we're at, there's been, through, really through everything in the economy, but really into construction and utilities, there's been such a large increase over the last 5 or 6 years that, hopefully that trend is not continuing. There should be a leveling off period.
I actually went through the trends because when we were analyzing it, and it was a steady uptick from about 2010 to 2018, but at 2020 it was something outrageous. I don't remember the exact increase, but it was under 5, right? It just ticking along, increases up to about 20, I think it was 2018 or 2019. When you got to 2020, it was, I don't remember what it was. It was over 5. And then one of those years in between 20 and 24 was almost double digits increase. So, of course, you see it in your grocery bill and your
You see it in everything.
restaurant bill, and
we're building the gym over at Northwoods Middle School, and in 2018 we built a whole elementary school that was $18 million, and this middle school gymnasium is $11.5 million. It just makes no sense.
Well, the base is building in the infiltration plant, and I don't know the exact number, but it was over $100 million, and it's very close to the equivalent of our plant. And if you remember, we built our plant, I think, 8 wells and 100,000 feet of pipe or so for $47 million. We got a deal, I guess. So, all right. It's interesting times.
It is, you're right.
That's right. Okay.
Any other items for open discussion? All right, well, it looks like our next regular meeting is 5:30, Thursday, January 9th, 2025. If there's nothing else, I'd like to move for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in
Second.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Adjourned.
Merry Christmas. Happy